Is the war in Iran about a nuclear power, or is it actually about an oil mine that the US has been eyeing for many years? And also, you guessed it, Israel. Right, so I first want to get into the obvious note, which is, does Iran have a nuclear power? Most likely, it seems like that is true. I know what a lot of people online are saying, which is that Iran can't have nuclear power. The U.S. often fights wars in the Middle East for arms, and then there turns out to be none. But one thing that we have to consider is that this conversation about Iran having a nuclear power has existed for some time now. Even the nuclear deal that we're going to be discussing in this video was signed, I believe, in 2015. There was already discussions about the nuclear program that Iran was involved in, the US was involved in, that we were able to amicably reach an agreement on the nuclear power growth and also on raising sanctions from Iran. So I say all that just to say that, yes, for sure, Iran definitely has a nuclear program. There's no going around that. Most likely they have one, because why would there be conventions, conferences, agreements on that if it did not exist? All right, so just to jump slightly here, that nuclear deal was called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the details within that deal, because it does matter when we're talking about the current state that Iran is with Israel and also with the United States. The important thing to note about the nuclear deal was that it was signed in 2015, and then in 2018, the Trump administration withdrew from this deal. Now, at the time, Trump basically was saying that the whatever agreement that was reached was not actually beneficial to the US, and also that we needed to apply something stricter, which were to apply sanctions. If you're not familiar with sanctions, girl, I did not know either what that meant. I was like, I have to Google a bunch of things related to this topic, by the way. But sanctions basically are, there's different forms of it, but they're basically used to wield some kind of financial or political influence, for more so for trading. So for example, there are a lot of, which we're going to get into in this video, there are a lot of oil exports from Iran, and these oil exports are maybe there's embargo, so it's another country refuses to purchase it, or they withheld it from being sold in another country. They maybe tax it really highly so that when it gets imported, Iranians have to pay a lot for it. So there's a bunch of little details with those kinds of sanctions that restrict a country's economy. So for Iran, they are on the receiving end of that, where they are being a little bit restricted in their economy because of those things. So they struck this deal so that they wouldn't continue to develop their nuclear program, but that they can trade the oil a little bit more freely. When Trump withdrew from this deal in 2018, there were only 6 countries that actually supported this withdrawal. And I just pointed out to say that basically all the other countries were like, wait, Trump, why are you withdrawing from this? They've been adhering to the rules and regulations of the sanctions. We do consistent checks. I think they said they do 90-day checks. So there's somebody in the facility that's familiar with the facility, is checking up on things, making sure that they are not developing their nuclear program. And every other country that was part of that deal was like, yes, they're actually living up to it. They're sharing, they're transparent, all those things. But again, I digress. The 6 countries that that did support the Trump administration from withdrawing from that nuclear deal were Bahrain, Egypt, Israel, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Yemen. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the conflicts or the relationship between those 6 countries and Iran. All right, going down the list here, can we pull up the list, please? Yes. Okay, Bahrain. Relationship with Iran is tense. Iran has historically claimed Bahrain as part of its territory until 1970. UN referendum confirmed Bahrain's independence. Yada, yada, yada. Okay. Egypt, we can see here, cold and mostly non-existent since 1979, when Egypt granted asylum to the deposed Shah of Iran and signed a peace treaty with Israel. Okay, so it's like, see, we're picking sides here, but we're going to keep moving on. Israel, hostile. Since the Iranian Revolution, Iran has refused to recognize Israel and supports anti-Israel groups like Hezbollah and Hamas. All right, number 4 is Saudi Arabia, adversarial but brief periods of dialogue. United Arab Emirates, it's mixed. Yemen, Iran supports the rebels that are a part of a civil war. So you get the picture, basically. These are all of Iran's enemies. Outside of that, everyone's thinking, hey, this is good. All right, so another key thing about this deal that I don't hear anybody mentioning is that the bombs that were sent in Iran on those nuclear facilities that Trump said that we've annihilated the program now were actually already known locations, nuclear plants in the original nuclear deal in 2015. How was there even oversight to miss those things in the plan? Because I think there were actually still adherences from some of the countries with Iran, where Iran was reporting. Right, so can we please pull up the photo here? All right, so this photo, as you can read from the top, it says Trump says U.S. has bombed nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow. And then we can see here what's listed is Fordow, this other site called Natanz EP, Ishfan Nuclear Technology Center. All right, I'm reading here directly from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. This is the nuclear deal itself and from 2015. And we can see here point number 6. Iran has converted the Fordow factory into a nuclear physics and technological center. International collaboration, including in the form of scientific joint partnerships, will be established in agreed areas of research. Yada yada. It's basically just saying how they're supposed to convert those nuclear facilities into now kind of civilian usage, public usage. It's not meant to be utilized for building up the building up the nuclear program. So so point number 2 here, I'm looking up Natanz, which is the other facility that I showed you in that photo, but Iran will begin phasing out its IR-1 centrifuges in 10 years. During this period, Iran will keep its enrichment capacity at Natanz at up to a total installed uranium enrichment capacities of 50, 60 IR-1 centrifuges. That was a mouthful, but you get the point. Basically, it's the project to convert that facility over to be used for something else, keep lower capacities of uranium, etc., etc. Now, I got into it a little bit in the beginning of the video, but you might be asking yourself, like, okay, then what is in this for Iran? Right, so I want to show you this article on CFR.org, and it describes here, I'll just read it directly, but most significantly, US President Barack Obama's administration dropped secondary sanctions on the oil sector, which allowed Iran to ramp up its oil exports to nearly the level it reached prior to sanctions. The United States and many European nations also unfroze about $100 billion worth of frozen Iranian assets. So what that should tell you is that obviously there is this very lucrative export from Iran, which is oil. And because of this lucrative export, obviously Iran, that is how it probably makes a lot of its money from foreign countries. But those foreign countries at one point were oppressing the exportation of that oil. So Iran was like, okay, then I'm going to probably need to develop a nuclear plan, because for right now, yes, you guys are blocking me, but at some point you guys might want to take over. And we're going to get into the history of that oil plant, but it is this sense of worrying about these outside influences taking over this oil facility from Iran, which is their main source of income. So that is most likely the birth of that nuclear program. All right, so switching over to the oil question, let's talk a little bit about the oil in Iran. So we have the establishment of an oil company that was a joint company with Iran and the British. Okay, so they both, well, probably more the British helped to supply the funds to be able to put together the infrastructure for this plant, but it was like mainly Iranian workers there. The deal that was struck up with this British-Iranian company, which by the name is Anglo-Persian Oil Company, and then the name later got changed to the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. Now, as I mentioned, this got built in the early 1900s. So after this period, there was a period of revolutionizing with the Iranian public, which eventually led to an Iranian revolution in 1979. Now, this is only important because after this revolution, which is also termed as the Islamic Revolution, Iran actually nationalized its oil industry, which basically meant that they jousted out the British and then said, this actually, the oil, all this oil that comes from us is actually 100% Iranian. Okay, it's not going to be a 51% for you, 16% for us anymore, which was the original split of the profit. And this oil company later became to be known as the National Iranian Oil Company. Now, I will be doing a full series on Iran, but one of the key things that comes up is that this oil company, or this, takeover of the original oil company, has caused a lot of tensions for Iran with a lot of countries, namely the US and Israel. And I just want to share that with you guys because as we do this series, you're going to see that there were moments where actually Israel and Iran worked together on those oil exports, no issues, actually a very amicable relationship. Same thing with the US and Israel. But it's important to understand what the historical context is of when they actually did get along and when they did not get along, because all of that helps us to understand the relationship between these countries. Now, as this is the first episode of this series, I think one of the key questions that a lot of people ask is like, why now? Like, going back to that original question, is it about this oil company or is it about the nuclear plant? And I think we can find that there's a little bit of an in-between, but the question still stands of why does this matter now? Now, the reason is not super simple, and this is my personal assumption, but it is the fact that Israel has obviously been engaging in a war in Palestine. And as part of that war, one of the militant groups that you guys probably have heard about in the news, even if you're not super keeping up with this, is the group Hezbollah. And also Hamas as well. But Iran is known to actually fund Hezbollah, which is a militant group that is outside of Iran. So they do help Iran fight in like proxy wars. But they do fund them. It's known that they fund them, and then also it is known that, or it is believed that I think that they fund Hamas as well. So as part of the Palestinian war, obviously they were able to, the Israelis were able to either like eliminate Hezbollah or Hamas, or at least have the remaining members of those groups kind of scatter out. And my point for saying that is basically just that Israel has had the inclination of wanting to attack Iran or go to war with Iran potentially, but it hasn't done that because of those militant groups, because the militant groups propose a potential threat to Israel, and they weren't sure exactly the outcome that would come about with the war, but because of what's been going on in Palestine, they know, okay, these wars actually, these militant group members are actually not going to be a threat to us this time if we attack this time. So as of today of filming this video, basically the update on this situation is just that there was a ceasefire call between Israel and with Iran. However, shortly after Trump shared that information with the public, there was another attack from both countries, I believe. So really, this topic is ever changing, and I'm filming this on today's date, but it is potential that some of the information shared in this video is going to be outdated by the time that the video comes up. But I want to thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope that you guys are able to try to get a better understanding of why this conflict is occurring, what is at the core of the conflict, because it is usually very rarely having to do with human rights or the US just caring about what's going on in another country. They care about the women and children in the other country, and it's like, wait, but there are a bunch of people that are homeless here, and there's a bunch of people that are struggling to make ends meet here. So why are we trying to, why are we trying to do that in another country? Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone.